Architectural Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
You called regarding a question on a door?
Yeah, I'm contemplating building a highly insulated, energy-efficient door. It's 3.5 inches thick. So I'm trying to hone in on what hardware I might be able to put on this thing. I need a deadbolt, a knob, heavy-duty hinges because it's about 140 pounds. And ideally, I'd like to have a 3-point lock on it, but I'm not sure. That comes for a door that thick and what the price would be.
Well, I imagine it could be manufactured for a door of that thickness, a multi-point lock. Well, forgive me, I know that it can be done. It's just a question of how exotic you want to make the lock. So you could do a piece of hardware, just talking about the lock for a moment. You could do an aluminum storefront type bolt, a very heavy duty bolt that you can add a top and a bottom extension bolt that will secure you to the sill, to the jamb, and the header. The door thickness is no problem because all we're doing is adding longer cylinders to it. So that's easy. All the way up to a mortise lock that will be 3-point, that will be certainly approaching $1,000, if not more. The former solution I said is relatively inexpensive. Depending on the actual length of the cylinders needed, that can be a $300 or a $400 solution for a multi-point. The problem you're going to have with what you said is a knob, because hardware that's extended becomes costly because they don't extend the inexpensive series by Corbin, Sargent, Yale, Schlage, whoever. So that passage will cost you some money. What people do is they'll put a pull handle on it, so maybe, which wouldn't be inexpensive, but you'd spend a few $100s on an extended passage. 140 pounds is not very heavy in the world that the sandbox we play in, but nonetheless, you would do hinges would be fine for a door of that weight. You might do a pivot because it would be more efficient in terms of how it would carry the load long term. And then, obviously, weather stripping the opening would have to be something you would do.
Yeah.
Is it a swinging, or is it a single swing, or are you trying to make it double acting?
No, it's a single swing.
Okay. Okay.
Just an entry door.
Yeah.
So you were talking about. Well, first, let me come back to the pull handle. Is that So that wouldn't be a knob. That's just a handle, right?
Yeah. I mean, think of the concept of what's likely on your refrigerator, or what's on your cabinet pull, and then you just order that to the length and to the diameter that best suits the requirements. And the reason I say it is because it's quite in vogue nowadays to do a long pull handle and then a deadbolt, or a roller latch deadbolt, so that you can keep the door in the closed position even though it's not locked. Or secured, I should say, and then be able to pull it on and off, that roller latch.
Yeah, I don't know what those are, but what does it look like, the roller latch? In a pair of doors in a home or a hotel, that the pair of doors separates the couch TV area to the bedroom suite area, the bedroom area. Mm-hmm. Well, those doors generally have spring-loaded balls in the top of them that keep them in the closed position, but they provide no security. Oh, I see. I just Googled it. I see it now.
Yeah.
So the pull handle, could it have a thumb latch on it?
Well, technically it can. In fact, you could do a set of pull handles that would be mounted. You would have a vertical pull on each side of the door that you could have a thumb turn on the inside and then a keyed cylinder on the outside. That's called a locking door bolt. That stuff's been around for maybe 5 or 10 years that I'm aware of, and it is fairly common, and you'll see it in malls where you've got glass doors and they've got handles on each side. Well, how do they lock these things with these glass doors? Well, the cylinder's in the pull handle assembly itself. You could do that as well. Those are not inexpensive, though, but they're super elegant.
Yeah, I'm looking for something that isn't too expensive.
Well, you're building something that if you're going to actually hit a specific R value will not be inexpensive, and the 3.5-inch thickness paints you into a corner. To keep it as inexpensive as possible, you would use butt hinges. You would probably, the 3-point lock situation is not going to substantially add to a single point lock cost if you go with the storefront hardware stuff. Then in terms of actually pulling the door open, you can spend as little or as much on a pull handle as you want. It's just that operating knob is going to be a few $100s for sure.
Oh, all right. So then, even for a door that thick, we can get a knob for a few $100?
I didn't say that. An operating knob for a door that thick is going to be a few $100s. How many is a few? I don't know. It would be more than 3 and less than 6 would be my guess. So if you're doing only a...
Sorry? If I'm doing only what?
If you're doing if you're doing a deadbolt, and you're not doing a keyed lock, a keyed knob lock, I say avoid that and try to skin that cat some other way, because that's where a lot of money is going to be spent. Maybe a pull handle, maybe recessed pulls, maybe dummy, surface-mounted dummy knobs. The key is you're going to want to have the door in the latched position. So, it's winter time and you're coming in and out with groceries. Well, you don't want the door open. You want to push it closed and make sure it stays there. So that's where the roller latch might work out really well. And then a dummy handle or a pull handle or a dummy knob, that might work as well.
Okay, I can see that. So what would the aluminum 3-point lock look like? It's all internal, right?
It is, yeah. So it's basically, not that you may have ever really noticed it, but an aluminum storefront, when they put that key and they turn it, a giant bolt comes flipping up, and it locks into the jamb. Lights out, it's done. But they can add a couple of driver plates to that, and then a long rod that will shoot up to the top of the door and then shoot down to the bottom of the door. And as you throw the key and the bolt comes out, well, that bolt, the inner mechanism of the bolt itself, forces those rods up and down, and then will secure to the header and to the sill. Adams Wright is the manufacturer of that material, their MS-1851 series. And don't worry about writing any of this down. I'll give you my email, and you can send me an email, and I'll reply back with a cut sheet. And the reason I say that is because it's inexpensive and really secure. I mean, you'll back a truck into the door to break the door before you try to chop those bolts open. Really secure. Mm-hmm. Now, what will make that more expensive is the fact that you're going to need long cylinders, and those long cylinders are made of brass. So if you got a 3.5-inch thick door, you're going to need, an 1 5/8 cylinder on each side. And when you get longer than 1.5 inches, they become costly. Because they do. That's all there is to it. Those cylinders go from $15 each to, $125 each when it gets past 1.5 inches. And unless your door thickness changes, there's no way to make 1.5 inch cylinder work, because you would need one on both sides of the door. You'll need a key on the outside, and then either a key or a mortise thumb turn, just a turn on the inside. It's inherently the same device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I'm beginning to get a picture of how all this might knit together.
Yeah. And then in terms of your hinges, I would go with like 5-inch tall, possibly stainless steel, or just steel based. The width of the hinge will be dependent on your wall condition. If you only need to take the door to 90 degree, well, then I would probably go with a 5 by 4.5 or a 5 by 5, something like that. What's the height of the door?
It's a standard 6'8".
Okay, so if you want, if I was going to do it, I would use pivots, number one, but the weight doesn't force us into pivots. If I was going to do it, I would probably do 4 hinges, just because that door is heavier than average for residential. Tell me about your door. What are you building and what materials are you using?
It'll be a mahogany door with
what
insulation in between. Util. UTILE.
And that's from the African continent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Great. I'm familiar with sapele myself from either that or there's another species that is found in door work, but it's not genuine, meaning it's not from Central America. And that stuff that you'll get out of Africa is because of how dry the climate is there, it affects the grain pattern. So you're going to have some sort of African species of veneer, and what's the core going to be?
It'll be rock wool insulation. There's a cleat designed. It's actually a sandwich of 2, kind of standard thickness doors, if you will, or not even standard thickness, about 3/4 inch on each side sandwich with insulation in the middle and a small window near the top.
Mm-hmm.
And there's there's a middle, a bottom, and a top rail.
Yeah. Mineral rock wool is used in our industry when it comes to steel doors, actually. There's a type of construction of a very heavy-duty hollow metal door that there's nothing else they can put in there but mineral rock wool, and it does serve for sound deadening, retarding sound transmission, thermal transmission. I don't know how high it is on the R value scale, but obviously I would imagine you've done your research.
Yeah, it's it's about it depends on the thickness, of course, but it's a reasonable thing to put inside a door.
It is.
So I was looking at these pivot hinges. It looks like they mount top and bottom, right?
Offset pivots would be the one that you want. They do mount top and bottom, and you would, by best practice, you would have an intermediate pivot as well. The problem with your application is that best practice would also dictate quite a custom pivot because you want that bottom arm centered under the load, and a standard pivot would not put that bottom arm nearly under the center of the load. So you would go from, say a $350 set to doubling that because of your door thickness. I say I would do it because I sell door hardware, so that's why I would do it. Plus, it's a more efficient way to carry the load. But 140 pounds, a heavyweight hinge that's 5 inch tall, best practice would tell us 3 hinges on that door, and you wouldn't see any wear for a couple of decades, in my opinion.
The concern I have with the pivot hinges is it's already going to be difficult to air seal it at the bottom and top, and particularly the bottom, the threshold. And we have a system worked out for it. But I think the pivot hinges wouldn't work with that system. But the original article that this idea came from, they used ball bearing hinges.
Yes, you would not consider anything but ball bearing or some version of a low friction coefficient hinge construction, not necessarily ball bearing. There are superior designs, but yes, you would use at least a ball bearing hinge.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a problem when you use pivots of running a seal on the underside of the door. Another thing that you could consider is if your construction of the door permits it is to route a half by half channel in the door, mortise in the door on all 4 sides, then you would install an aluminum holder, and then you would insert into it a pile seal, and you would back that with springs behind it so that over time you can adjust the projection of your weather stripping as things settle or hinges wear out. You can tailor that a little bit. But yeah, how are you planning on weather stripping it?
There's a jam setup with a double weather stripping seal that goes around, at two different thicknesses, if you will. the way it's constructed. And then on the threshold, we'll have a brush sweep, and then there's another insulating threshold product that will come up and seal the bottom of the door after the brush sweep, forward of the brush sweep.
Mm-hmm. And the sweep will be on the inside of the opening?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would probably add a drip cap to the outside of the door if there's any potential for moisture hitting the door.
Yeah.
It's
recessed, actually, and a bit of a setback within the...
You got an overhang or something, sure.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds fun.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned... you built some of these doors?
I've built many doors in my day. Many.
Oh.
I have forced round pegs into square holes. Yes, sir. It's fun. The only luxury that we don't have enough of is time when it comes to exploring these things, because you can get it right if you've got the time. And of course, the pocketbook. Those projects end up being costly, but it's time.
Well, this door was it was shown in Fine Home Building. That's several years ago, but that's where I stumbled across it. But they use a cleat system to secure those sandwiches together.
Yeah.
It's a 30-degree dovetail cleats that are hammered in across the width of the door, if you will, top and bottom, to secure the two pieces together. And I was a little bit, I was trying to think through if the door is going to, tend to rack and sag over time, if that all of that, along with the sandwich glued up construction, is enough to hold the weight of the door true and square.
That is most certainly an argument for pivots, because you distribute the load to a very different point of that door, because 70% of the weight of the door is going to be borne by that top hinge. So that's where all the stress is going to come. So if there's going to be any long-term deformation of the door structure itself, it would be contributed to the fact that you're using hinges to begin with. Given the thickness of your door and the fact that the weight of your door is not extreme at all, you could incorporate the standard pivot where that arm is going to be not nearly under the center of the thickness of the door, and still allow yourself room to run your door bottom. So that might work. Those pieces of hardware vie for space with each other, as you can tell, as you already know, but you might look at that. And if you're concerned about the structure being a problem long term, look for an alternate means of hanging. But if you might be overthinking it, then just stick with hinges.
Okay, that's good to know. So you talked a little bit about sending me information on everything we talked about.
Yeah, the lock is the thing you'll want to see. Pull handles are, that's just a matter. If you want to see a catalog on that, you would want to see that if you're deciding to go that route. You need some way to keep the door in the closed position. You need some way to lock the door. You need some way to hang the door, and some way to touch it and push it and pull it open. So yeah, my email, I can give you my email. It's under Contact Us in the upper right-hand corner of our site. It's the sales email from absupply.net, and my name is Richard.
Yeah, I saw a video of you talking about a fixed building kit, hardware kit, and I noticed that information there. But that's how I ended up calling you.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I could send you an email, and I'd especially be interested in looking at that, 3-point lock you were talking, or multi-point lock you were talking about.
Absolutely, yeah, we do that all the time. They're used all the time. So it's just a matter of
that's going to pull it tight to the jamb and tight to the weather stripping. Right? If I'm going to all this trouble to build an insulated door, the air sealing is almost more important than the insulation.
Yeah, so that's going to be the hardware is not going to guarantee that, but the way that works is
when the bolt is thrown up from the vertical to the horizontal, the strike in the jamb has a trapezoid shape inside of it so that it goes from wide to narrow as the bolt comes up. And it does serve to force that door into a centered position. So if you install that in such a way that you're getting some compression on your weather stripping, that's how that would work. Or, you know, you make your own strike with a blank piece of aluminum. Well, you'd prefer steel, actually, so that you can force the thing. But you know, as you turn your key or you turn your thumb turn, well, that's you turning on the force of that bolt, trying to draw that door tight. So I think it's really just going to be a matter of closing the door, holding it in the closed position, and then throwing your lock, rather than just pushing the door to the 0 degree and then trying to throw your deadbolt. You might want to give it a little push, that 1/16 of an inch, that will then draw it tight. But as you go to draw that deadbolt back, you'll have trouble with that. And in fact, high-end manufacturers of mortise locks will, when there's a mortise lock with a deadbolt prep in the strike and a latch strike, the back side of that that's towards the stop face, they're not in alignment because they know that when you push the door closed, the door is going to push, the weather stripping will push it back. So they offset that deadbolt prep a little bit to account for the fact that you don't want to be in there filing the strike, because if it's lined up vertically, your deadbolt's going to hit it because that compression of the gaskets push the door out a little bit. So that's a detail that you'll have to contend with. I don't have a hardware answer for that, short of, you know, putting an electromagnetic lock on the door. So you can get it to that point, bang, it'll stay there.
So what you're describing, it won't reach out and pull the jamb, you know, not at the top and bottom, but along the length of the jamb, right? I've seen designs where there's 2 or 3 hooks that kind of hook into the jamb and pull it tight.
No, the hardware I'm talking about does not have that feature, and I'd like to see what would be an example of what you're describing. I'm familiar with the words that you're using, but I'm failing on coming up with a piece of hardware that I can think about that does that.
Oh, I could send you a picture. Yeah, I could send you a picture of it. That should help. I'm just looking to see if I have one handy. Anyway, I think I could come up with a picture.
Yeah, send it out. I'd like to see it.
Okay. Great. Well,
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.